So, hi, Mike. Welcome. I'm so pleased that you're willing to do this interview because you are the guy that discovered Planet 9, or actually you didn't discover it, but you've seen something that points to the existence of a Planet 9. And you don't get to meet people that discover planets very often. And also, of course, and you've heard about this thing going on in Denmark now, that we have the annual Christmas fairy tale. This is a thing that goes back to my childhood, that the national television, the big two that we have now, they take turns doing this annual thing. And this year, Planet 9 plays a key role. So Planet 9 is going to be very famous in Denmark. And of course, the discoverer of the Planet 9 is also going to be famous. So it's really fun to be able to talk to you and have the Danish kids see the guy who actually came up with this idea and the observations.
I'm very excited about this. I have to say that the idea that Planet 9 is part of Danish Christmas. I have told all of my friends about this, and I would say it was a dream come true if I had known that this was something that happened at Danish Christmas. But now that I know about it, it's like a dream come true.
Well, that's good to hear. And yeah, it is a fun story. And so they'll actually also get to sort of think about the outskirts of the solar system. Which kind of leads to the first thing I was just going to ask you before we dive into Planet 9. I mean, you are now a professor of astronomy at CALTECH. You've done really well as an astronomer. Was there ever a defining moment? I mean, why are you an astronomer? Why did you end up looking for objects at the outskirts of the solar system? How did that happen? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up always wanting to be an astronomer, and it came from the earliest ages. I grew up in the 70s, and I grew up in northern Alabama, which is where the Saturn V rockets were being built to send people to the moon. And so my father worked on rockets. Everybody around town worked on rockets in some way. So most of the kids wanted to do rockets, wanted to be engineers who built stuff. And I was always interested in yes, the rockets, but I really wanted to know what was out there, what the things were, and just the exploration. And I didn't know at that early age that I would actually really do it, that this is what I would allow to do for my career, for my life. So I just feel incredibly lucky to have found my way here and be allowed to continue the exploration of our solar system.
Yeah, you certainly ended up doing interesting stuff. Even without Planet 9, you've discovered a lot of stuff out there. So, but then getting to Planet 9, when did it actually dawn on you that maybe you had discovered something that pointed to another planet?
It was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. There was another set of astronomers had published a paper that showed some weird orbital things in the very outer edge of the solar system, and they tried to figure out why, and they couldn't understand it. And so I took these, I went down the hall to my friend and colleague, Konstantin Batigan, who's also a professor here. And he and I scratched our heads and thought about it. And we said, well, you know what could make this? If there was a planet out there, it would do all this easily. And we both laughed and said, okay, but that's ridiculous, because we all know there are only 8 planets. There's not another planet out there. And so we worked for about a year and a half, trying very hard to show that it was not a planet. And as we continued working, we realized the only thing that can explain these gravitational anomalies, these perturbations, the only thing that can explain it is a giant planet well beyond the orbit of Neptune. And that's where the idea was born. And we've been on the hunt for it ever since.
So it kind of slowly emerged. It wasn't sort of
it. People have been speculating about planets beyond Neptune ever since the discovery of Neptune. So it's been 170 years. People have said, "Oh, I think there's a planet. Oh, I think there's a planet." They've always been wrong. They've always been their observations were wrong, or the reasons they thought it was wrong. So in the field of astronomy, it's kind of a joke. You know, if somebody stands up and says, I think there's a planet beyond Neptune, everybody says, oh, you're one of those people, and laughs at you. And so it's hard to stand up and be the 34th and 35th people in the last 170 years to say, I think there's a planet beyond Neptune and everybody else was wrong, but we're right. But I think there's a planet beyond Neptune and everybody else was wrong and we're right.
So that also sort of took a little longer because this is really sort of a no-go to suggest this.
Right. And yeah,
really
so and then astronomers, you know, they read our paper and they're like, oh, these guys too. But it's, as people have continued to study and see what we're talking about, it's a pretty convincing case. So I think it's there. I think we're going to find it.
Oh, yeah. So you're winning more and more on your side.
Scientists are a skeptical lot, as they should be. If somebody else had said, I think there's a planet beyond Neptune, I would have said, oh, these people, and would have been very skeptical. And so it takes a lot to convince people. But slowly, the people who have looked at it the most carefully, I think, are most convinced. But in the end, it doesn't really matter if we convince people or not. It matters if we find it. So when we find it, everybody will be convinced. Until we find it, not everybody will be convinced.
So, and this is possibly an evil question, but what do you think the odds are that it's there?
It's a good question to ask. What are the odds? You know, we say there's a planet out there, but what do we really mean? What we really mean is we've done the statistical analysis, and in the statistical analysis, there's something like a 99.8% chance that something is out there perturbing the outer solar system. And nobody else, we can't come up with another explanation. Nobody else came up with another explanation. Does that mean there can't be another explanation? No. But what it means is that a planet is a pretty reasonable explanation. It's not actually that weird to have a planet at that distance. Other stars have planets like that. So it's a very natural explanation. It explains a lot of different things we see in the solar system. So I think the answer is that the probability that there's a planet out there is something like 100%. Um, 100% is a frighteningly large number to say out loud. But that is what I believe. And I think that we will find it.
Well, exciting. We have our hopes up. Which actually, that also kind of leads to the next question, because it's funny, and I think a lot of people haven't realized that. I hadn't realized that before I dove into this Planet 9 story, that Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto were actually photographed before they were discovered. And I just noticed that there's now a story out that a professor at the Imperial College in London has, his name is Robinson, he's gone through some IRIS satellite data. IRIS was a infrared satellite from the 80s. And he thought maybe he could find Planet 9 on some of their observations. And he actually came up with a couple of candidates. So what do you think about the general idea that maybe we already have a picture of it? And also, what do you think about the idea that it could be in the IRIS data?
I think it's a fascinating possibility that Planet 9 has already been seen but not recognized. And as you say, it happened with Uranus. Uranus had been cataloged as a star more than a dozen times in the 100 years before it was recognized. Neptune was first seen by Galileo, and he thought it was a star because he didn't notice that it was moving. And Pluto was, the first images of Pluto are, I think, from 1916, 1915, something like 15 years before its discovery. It even happened to me. One of the largest thing that I've discovered to date is Eris, this dwarf planet that's more massive than Pluto. We found it in we found it in 2003. And after we had tracked it and figured out its orbit, we traced its orbit backwards. We found it in photographs from 1950. Strangely enough, taken with the exact same telescope where we discovered it 50 years later. So the sky, there are many telescopes taking pictures of the sky in many different wavelengths, and they could well have seen Planet 9. And the trick is to then recognize it, because when you see Planet 9, well, it's here one night, and then the next night it's here, and then a year later it's here, and it just looks like a dot that comes and goes. And so finding it is hard. So this IRAS analysis was to look for things that were here once, not here, but then something was here, and then maybe you can connect them. And it was a great analysis, because it's important to go back and look at data like this. In the end, IRAS is gosh, hard to believe it's something like 40 years old now. It was not really a big enough, powerful enough telescope to be able to really see as far away as we think Planet 9 is. But in the analysis, there were a couple of other things that he found, that he thought he found, something that was here and then here. And in the end, I think those are just little blips that weren't real objects, or they were something else going on in the sky, because no one's been able to find the actual thing that was predicted from those. So I think it was just a demonstration that, if you look hard enough, you can find a couple of blips here and there. But we are actively searching right now using old data for this exact reason. It's the right way to at least start.
Plus, I guess, a lot of new observations as well. So, I mean, you are actually scanning the skies for this planet.
It is true. We have we're looking in the past, we're looking in the present. We will find it one way or another.
I think I heard you say some point that within the next 10 years, if it's there, you should be able to find it in the next 10 years, or I may be wrong.
I am eternally optimistic. And so if people ask me, I will say, I think, and I always have a new analysis that I'm just about to finish that I'm very excited about, and I think I'm going to find it. And so usually I say, within the next year, we're going to find it within the next year. And then my colleague, Konstantin Batygin, is eternally pessimistic. So he says 10 years. I say 1 year. I say, if you take the average of the two of us, you might actually be correct.
Okay. Yeah. Well, but not in a totally unforeseeable future. It should be within some years that we'd have this either. I guess you never really realize that it's not there. The only way you can really figure this out. I mean, could you search so thoroughly that you could rule out that it's there?
That's a really good question, and that's one of the hard things, is that you look forever and ever and ever and never find it. And what that really tells you is maybe it's a little bit fainter than you thought it was, which means maybe a little smaller, a little further away. But what also happens as you continue the search, we're continuing to map out these gravitational perturbations in the outer solar system. And if as we continue to map them, the signal gets stronger and stronger. Even if we haven't found the planet yet, if the signal for the planet keeps getting stronger, we are more and more confident that it's really there. But it is frustrating when we don't find it. It still is a frustrating. Like it'd be easier just to find it.
It's really black and just not.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I guess we'll just look forward to hearing about the news when somebody finds it.
Yeah.
It'd be fair if you were involved, at least in some way. Before we end, I have a completely different kind of question.
Okay.
It looks like you're in your living room, but I guess you're actually in your office at CALTECH. That's a professor office at CALTECH. It looks really nice. But you also told me that you actually celebrate Christmas in a Danish way, which surprised me, in California. And I was just, why is that? And what is it that you do?
So this is a total coincidence, but it's also why I was so delighted to be part of Danish Christmas. When I was a graduate student, I was very good friends with a family, a Danish family, and I went to their house for Christmas every year in California, and they celebrated Danish Christmas. It was the most amazing thing that I'd ever seen. They had you know, in the United States, nobody puts candles on the tree, and they think you're crazy if you do that. And they would get the tree fresh a day or two before. They would put candles on the tree. They would have all the red and white garlands on the tree, and the flags, and the little hearts that you stuff the candies in, and Danish. And it was to me, and then light the candles and go around the tree and hold hands and sing Danish songs. And I loved it. It was, to me, it was the most magical Christmas experience anybody could ever have, and utterly unlike anything that I had ever seen around here. And when I moved, so that was up in the northern part of California. When I moved to Southern California, I just decided, and I had my own house for the first time. I just decided I'm going to do this. I have no Danish connection. I have no Danish family, but I can do this anyway. So we get our tree fresh. We order our candles and our candle holders from Denmark, because you can't buy those in the United States. We don't sing Danish songs because I could sort of hum along at the time, but I don't know them. But we invite our friends over. We I don't know if this part is the traditional Danish, but we did what I always did with that family. They all sit in the dark room and practice the songs, and I light the candles, and everybody comes out, and it's beautiful. It is, and people, when we bring people who have never done it before, they're like, they've never seen that look of the candles on the tree as you walk in after you've been in the dark, and it's just big and bright. And again, these are the things I don't know if they're traditional Danish or just this family. We have we all wait till the candles go out. We fight about which is the last candle to go, and everybody gets their candle, and there's a present for whoever guesses the last candle out. I don't know. Are those traditional Danish ones, or just what that family?
I have not heard about this before, but I think there are a zillion variations. So
this was, but I love Christmas in a way that I had never really quite loved Christmas before, and it's because of that. So this is why, to me, it's so special and so delightful to be part of this Danish Christmas celebration.
Well, that is so fun. That's a surprising connection here. That was not the answer I expected the first time we wrote about this, that there was a connection there. But should you ever want to try a Danish Christmas in Denmark, let me know, and you're cordially invited with your family. That would be fun.
I would love to sometime. We really need to do that.
I was going to say anytime, but any Christmas, you're most welcome. All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much for letting us meet you and hear about what it's like to potentially have discovered another planet of our solar system. What could possibly be bigger than that? So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.